Good morning, everyone. How you doing? Nice to be up here in the sky with you. It's a beautiful morning here in Toronto. That was really terrific to hear from Eric. Obviously, a guy who's not afraid to flex the policy chops, and I think that's important when we talk about leadership and when we talk about politics and platforms. There's a guy who has a couple novel ideas. Let's give it up one more time for Eric Lombardi. And I want to thank Chris and Matt very much for hosting me. It's great to be back here. Another success. This event keeps getting bigger and bigger. I keep getting more direct messages and texts about this thing coming up every year, further in advance. So there's a lot of energy and enthusiasm about what you are doing here in Toronto and your contributions to making our city a great place to live. It's great to be invited back, and this time is under a little bit of a different context. And that's that things have changed since the last time we got together. We were in a different venue. It was lower to the ground, not so high up in the air. But it's not just that. It's not just where we're sitting. We are now 13 days into a campaign to elect the next mayor of Toronto. And with 166 days to go, Torontonians will have an opportunity to go to the ballot box and choose the direction, the future of Toronto. And I've been traveling across all 630 square kilometers of this city, and no matter where I go, whether it's Rexdale, Riverdale, Etobicoke, Scarborough, North York, or down to the water, I hear different versions of the same story over and over again. And that's helped me set in on a set of priorities that I will prioritize and direct my focus to if I have the honor of serving as your next mayor here in the city. I describe it as the 3 C's. Crime, because the daily chaos that folks are subjected to here in this city is becoming untenable. Because safety is the foundation of every great city where we want to put down roots, raise a family, or come together to build. Congestion, because time is your most precious resource. It's the one thing that you can't get back. And today, with the gridlock on our streets, and with the transit that is no longer reliable that you can count on, City Hall is stealing your time every single day. And lastly, cost. One of the things that we're focusing on here, because your biggest bill every month is your rent or your mortgage, and your biggest bill every year is your property tax, the costs have escalated so significantly in this city that families who grew up here in Toronto that are looking to lay down roots here in this city are in fact leaving. In a flight for affordability, 77,000 people last year left the city of Toronto, and that's not sustainable either. So my campaign message so far and throughout the next 5 months will be very consistent. It is one of hope, and that under the right leadership, with the right focus and prioritization, we can build a city that we can be proud of again. A place where we are welcoming newcomers, where young families see jobs and opportunities, and it is a destination to lay down roots and foundations and build a family. Now, I know many of you in this room have been involved and led on the housing challenges here in the city. I have sat with many of you under the leadership of our former chief planner, Greg Lintern, who's with us this morning, around the table, working through the bylaws, working through the guidelines, working with the building code, trying to find a pathway to yes. And you've seen policy responses with mixed results from all 3 levels of government. I know you don't need to hear another stump speech from a politician. If there had been as much action on housing as there has been speeches, we would be a lot further ahead. But the numbers make it clear about the challenges that are in front of us and also what the opportunities are. And at a time when we need more housing starts in Toronto, housing starts have fallen off a cliff. Last year, we had the fewest number of housing starts in Toronto that we had seen in nearly 30 years. A 31% decrease from the year before, which, by the way, wasn't a banner year for us. Part of the reason is because it's never been more expensive to build in the city of Toronto. As you know, development charges have increased 1,200% over the past 15 years. And I tell people all the time, you point out another consumer product, whether that is a bottle of water or a phone, I can't point to anything that has increased 1,200% over the past 15 years. If you had rocketed your prices like that, you'd be out of business. But when it comes to taxing housing, that has been the approach at the City of Toronto. In 2021, DC's brought in $900 million of revenue for the city. That has plummeted because in 2025, we only had 15% of that, $115 million. So that really shows you, you look at the contrast between those 2 years of the direction that we've gone. If we're not collecting development charges, that means people aren't pulling building permits. It means projects aren't going forward and shovels aren't getting in the ground. Contrast that with the fact that we have $3 billion in our development charge reserve account that City Hall can't get out the door to build the infrastructure to support the growth that we desperately need. That's why I have proposed from City Hall to cut development charges by 25% using the Housing Accelerator Fund as the offset. If we do that, if we put some skin in the game, that allows us to access new funds that have been stood up by the province and the federal government for further reductions, while still funding and supporting the infrastructure that we need to build this city. Last year, the current administration under Mayor Chow was taking a victory lap on the fact that 7 out of 10 homes were public builder homes here in Toronto. And think about that for a second. 7 out of 10, the city is building or leading on. Now, to me, we shouldn't be bringing out the champagne for that. We should be hitting the panic button. Because this isn't about the city stepping up. It's about the private sector spiraling out of control and government not setting the conditions where you can go and do the work that you do best, which is build the housing that we need. Now, there are some bright spots to consider here, and they're here with us in this room. Because the missing middle housing sector accounted for approximately 40% of all housing starts in Toronto in 2025. And you should be commended for that. Because this was a sector that was effectively locked out of the City of Toronto via our zoning bylaw and our policies for many, many years, despite this type of housing form being one of the most desirable forms in some of the most desirable neighborhoods here in the city for over a century. Developments with units of 3 to 5 units outpace those with 100 units or more for the first time on record. You are building the future of Toronto neighborhood by neighborhood, and I think that is the direction that we are going to head in for quite some time. I want to leave you with a couple final points. When we look ahead to the election on October 26th, it will be between 2 competing visions for Toronto. One vision would suggest to you that the problems we have today are just the normal outcomes of living in a big city. There is a resignation towards mediocrity. There is a conditioning to accept less. Status quo is the default setting, and the best predictor of whatever we're going to do tomorrow is whatever we did yesterday. That you and residents or aspiring residents should lower your expectations, accept the safety issues, the congestion, the lack of reliability on our transit, and the costs that are escalating and driving people out of the city. That vision is also content with the current pace of approvals at City Hall. That the regulatory friction that makes it nearly impossible and certainly more expensive to build homes in Toronto is just a part of life here in the big city. That vision that tells us government knows better than you do and is better equipped and positioned to build the housing that we all talk about as necessary here for the future of the city. The contrast would be, and you've heard me from my experiences as the chair of the Planning and Housing Committee, is that Torontonians do not need to accept this as a way of life. Do not need to accept leadership that is satisfied with what we've got. You can demand better. The policies can be debated until we are all blue in the face, but we all know these policies. The bylaws, the guidelines are a symptom of an ideology that is content with accepting less, building fewer homes, and protecting status quo. That will never be my approach if I am fortunate enough to be elected as your mayor. My approach will be to focus on your potential, unleash opportunities, create the conditions where we can build a city that we can all be proud of. My mentality will be, how do we get to yes, and how do we do it faster? How do we roll up our sleeves and solve problems? When roadblocks are put in front of us, how do we work together to remove them? Because all of you know that in Toronto, we are in a competition for talent, for capital, and investment. Every time we lose a headquarters, or a festival, or a family to Calgary, or Miami, or Austin, we are losing a little bit of what we built together here in this great city. The city needs a mayor that looks at delay as the enemy of progress. Housing should be built by anyone who can get it done and get it done now. Last time I was here, I saw some familiar faces in the room. I see some of those faces today. I noted that many of the people were here because they knew that there was a problem and they wanted to be part of the solution. That takes courage, it takes conviction, and it takes the type of determination to not accept status quo. The fear that many have is how to get to yes comes from the political risk and jeopardy that exists by being called to the carpet by councillors who have their own electoral preoccupations top of mind rather than what is the right thing to do for this city on a go-forward basis. I'm going to go a step further than that. I understand those risks. I see it play out at City Hall every single day, and you do as well as friends shoulder to shoulder in the cause. My commitment to you, to those of you who want to do right by the City of Toronto, by its residents, is to build with the next mayor of Toronto, to build with our council. My commitment is that I will always have your back. This is not a battle that you will be fighting alone. We will be in battle, working together, fighting for the city, fighting for the future together. And to everyone in the audience this morning who wants this city to focus on getting the basics right, to set the table for entrepreneurs, for risk takers, for people who have ambition, let's get on with that mission together. Let's come together over the next 166 days and build a city that we can be proud of. Thank you very much for having me out. Have a great conference and all the best success in the future. Thank you.